What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here. Oh man, I haven't seen anything that relates to this feud in a very long time. I believe I haven't seen anything about it since 2013. It was memorable for controversial reasons, that being the involvement of Paul Bearer, who had recently passed away at the time. It was a very heated feud that brought out the worst or best of CM Punk. He was really motivated at this point, wanted to steal the show with his promos and matches. Like, go back and watch some of them. He was really in his elements throughout late 2012 and early 2013. Once he returned, though, he was a shell of himself. I mean, there was that SummerSlam match, but what else? The Undertaker, on the other hand, was also teasing the fans into thinking, oh, this year's gonna be his last since like 2006 or something. Once he reached 20-0 and had that little moment with DX, it really felt like the end. But it wasn't. Now, before this video starts, I wasn't actually gonna go with this. I was actually making the Rise of DDP. Then I realized I can't finish in time, and so I left it to the side and decided, let's go with this. Let's go all out with the Undertaker and CM Punk feud. But rest assured, the DDP thing will be uploaded very soon when I'm finished with it. I'm gonna cover his debut all the way up to his first title win, so I'm excited for that one. Also, I read a comment the other day from one of you guys that asked me to start making videos on WCW, ECW, TNA pay-per-views and whatnot. So what do you guys want? Like, what first pay-per-view from one of those three promotions do you guys want to see me cover? Any pay-per-view. I prefer a very good one to start off with, but yeah, whatever you guys want, just comment it down below. I'll read all of them. There's a bunch of choices you guys could select. Any pay-per-view from those three promotions, so yeah. So right now, let's get into it. CM Punk versus The Undertaker, WrestleMania 29. At this point in time, February 2013, CM Punk was fresh off losing to The Rock twice on pay-per-view, and he was the number 2 guy throughout 2011, all the way up to this point when Rocky took his spot for 2 months. So WWE thought, you know what, let's do it. The Undertaker versus CM Punk at WrestleMania. Now, facing The Undertaker at WrestleMania was a big deal. I want to say, but ever since WrestleMania 21, if you were facing Taker, it meant you were a big star. No doubt about it. Edge, HBK, Orton, Batista, marquee names. There was a Mark Henry, but that was a one-time thing because of the Ray and Kurt Angle thing. As for how this story began, here we go. On the March 4th, 2013 episode of Raw, the old school episode, The Undertaker opened the show to tease his upcoming WrestleMania match. That's it. He came out, fire went out, and that's it. A couple of minutes, CM Punk comes out, and at this point, he was fresh off his loss to John Cena, and that match was something. So, of course, he complained about not competing at WrestleMania and whatever, and since he's not in the main event of the pay-per-view, there's no point in him appearing at the event. But he saw something, or someone, that gave him purpose. Straight up, he claims that he's gonna beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Punk thought it was hypocritical of the fans to roll their eyes whenever he mentions the historic title reign that he had, but when 20-0 is mentioned, it's the opposite. He proclaimed himself to be the 1 in 20-1, but Randy Orton interrupted. He talked about how he was a young star, yet almost beat The Undertaker. Basically, in 2013, it's gonna be different. Then The Big Show appeared. He, of course, mentioned his loss to The Undertaker at WrestleMania 19, but claims that now he's got the knockout blow, and so everything will be different. But Sheamus objects. He said that he was the only one who's never faced Taker, meaning he's never lost, and it's gonna take more than a KO, a GTS, or an RKO to beat The Undertaker, but maybe it's gonna take a big boot, all the heart in the world, and some Irish luck. Then the Heat Magnet put a stop to all of this, Vicky Guerrero. She booked a fatal 4-way main event with those 4 men to determine who faces The Undertaker at WrestleMania 29. So the main event goes down. Punk lied in wait during the match and struck Randy Orton with the GTS to punch his ticket to WrestleMania. So the other 3 were damn near killing each other, and all he had to do was pick his spot, that's all. Right after the match, The Undertaker came out and gave him a sign of what's to come, and the commentary team were really trying to sell it as a huge match, calling it the longest streak against the longest reigning champion of the last 25 years. Unfortunately, though, the next day, Paul Bearer passed away. His passing really affected the build-up of this match, and he was basically what the story was all about from here on. If it wasn't for him passing away, you gotta wonder, like, was he gonna be involved, or were they gonna take a totally different approach? Because I remember before the feud even began, Punk was calling himself names, he was calling himself God and whatnot. He was claiming a bunch of things, and it could have been a matter of time before he called himself the Phenom of the WWE or something like that. I think that's what direction they were going to take. Anyways, The Undertaker came out on the following Raw to remember his former manager, but Punk had to disrespectfully interrupt before the remembrance even began. Jerry Lawler called it the most disrespectful thing he's ever seen, and Punk tried to assure everyone he wasn't out here to besmirch Paul Bearer's name, but to offer his condolences to The Undertaker's loss. See, he's a good guy.
At WrestleMania.
Oh, hell no. He once again called himself the 1 in 20-1, and he's talking about how kids in the future will be asking their parents, where were you when CM Punk beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania? And the look on his face says it all. You Suck chants intensified as they transitioned elsewhere, but during the commercial break, Paul Bear's son Kane appeared and nearly chokeslammed him off the stage. He was just completely angry. I don't need to say, you could see it for yourself. He's throwing stuff, destroying guys in the locker room, and Vicky Guerrero realized this, so she punished the Second City Saint by booking him in the main event against Kane, and to make matters worse, it's no disqualification. On the match, Kane had no words to say. He was speechless and he wasn't in the frame of mind to talk, and so he just walked away. Now, the results of that match, though, it honestly shocks me. I don't remember it, but Kane actually won it. Does it make sense? In my eyes, yes, because Kane was sad about his father's death, and with CM Punk disrespecting him, he was going to go all out to win, and plus Punk lost because of a distraction, so nobody was hurt. It was just a one-week thing, you know. Unfortunately for the brothers, even though Kane won the match, Punk stood tall in the end. He grabbed that urn and assaulted Kane with it before running to the stage and mocking The Undertaker. Fans booed, the commentary team criticized everything he did as Raw went off the air. So basically, in a nutshell, the whole thing proved to me that he who laughs last laughs loudest. The following week, The Undertaker finally broke his silence regarding CM Punk's disrespectful actions. He said that last week, Punk sealed his own fate when he decided to make it personal. He promised to hurt him bad, but he was giving him one more chance to save his soul, and in order for him to do that, he's got to hand the urn. Then all of a sudden, Punk's on the Titantron mocking Paul Bear, and he said that Paul told him that his death isn't just a personal loss, it's a professional loss. Paul also told him that if The Undertaker loses by countout or disqualification, it's still a loss. Punk mentioned how Taker answers to a higher power and said that he doesn't because he's the higher power, and no, he's not going to say it's his destiny to end or whatever, but he is the man that can hold the burden of snapping the streak, because he will go through hell, endure whatever Taker sees fit to inflict on him to be the one that ends it all. At one point, Punk even dropped the urn and was saying that there was no disrespect intended. Like that was gonna fix anything. The trolling didn't end there because the next week, CM Punk and Paul Heyman continued messing with the urn. In a condescending tone, he mentioned how they say The Undertaker is unstoppable at WrestleMania. They say his power is connected to the urn. They are irrelevant in his eyes, because their claims are just that. CM Punk felt 20 was the perfect moment for Taker to ride off into the sunset, but his WrestleMania storybook career is going to be rewritten by a man who happens to be the best in the world. Punk wasn't holding himself responsible for the loss because The Undertaker's to blame. And the urn wasn't taken because of Paul Bear, it's because the urn means so much to The Undertaker. He also said that he doesn't give a damn about it, and he tossed it to the mat as the fans booed. Basically, what Punk was trying to say is that The Undertaker coming back was a mistake, because against the others, Taker could have gone 50-0, but he's CM Punk, and there's nobody in the world that is better than him. He's the 1 in 20-1 in his eyes. And his closing words, The Undertaker and his WrestleMania streak will rest in peace, but out he came. The fans were loving every second of this beating. Paul Heyman, the running back, grabbed the urn and scored a touchdown. Punk follows through, and once again, even though he got his ass beat, he was still in the driver's seat because he's got the urn. From here, Punk continued taking it far. He was like, I don't give a damn about disrespecting Paul Bear's legacy because it was all about getting to The Undertaker. He knew that Taker's coming for his soul, but that's not concerning him because he's there to capitalize from his mistakes, be it a disqualification win or a count. It doesn't matter in his eyes. All he wanted was a W in the record books. At the end of the night, and this is the most memorable segment of the feud for sure, The Undertaker appeared to deliver one final message to Mr. 434. He promised that the pain Punk will suffer lasts an eternity. He made it personal, and defeating him at WrestleMania isn't good enough to The Undertaker, because the disrespect that he showed to Paul Bear will cause him to pay the ultimate price. Taker knew that his streak may come to an end this Sunday, but he was going to make sure that CM Punk won't live to talk about it. Suddenly, the Druids appeared. Taker himself wasn't really expecting it by the looks of it, and then Paul Heyman came out and made a mockery of the deceased. The Undertaker saw enough, but then realized it was a trap, because CM Punk, disguised as a druid, runs in and makes the attack, repeatedly whacks him with the urn, and as he's delivering the beating, he's trash-talking, you know, I did this to you and whatever. Undertaker and CM Punk chants engulfed the arena, and then to top it all off, he opened the damn urn and poured the ashes to a chorus of boos. It was ridiculous. It was actually cat litter, though. Might have been controversial to some, but I found out that Paul Bear's family signed off on the whole thing. And also, when you look at it in storyline, you know, in kayfabe, I don't think it got this personal. Like, even when HBK cost Taker the title, it was all about business. Edge might have been a bit personal in his quest to ending the streak, but this was just too far out compared to the others. Punk was just this grade A douche that was craving the ultimate vindication of why he's the best. He went so far that he disrespected the dead in order to reach that goal. The Undertaker, on the other hand, was all about honoring his friend's legacy. Heading into the match, me personally, I doubted it was going to end, but there was always that little belief in my mind like the other years, because I remember remember thinking maybe Triple H could do it. Maybe HBK could do it. Anyways, it was cool that Punk got Living Color to perform his song live. It really added in a way. Also, what about the gray and purple attire? It's a nice little touch. He's trying to get at The Undertaker. So he's ready for this one. He was ready to prove to everyone in the back why he deserved to be the main event. And The Undertaker's entrance, legendary. Those guys involved were actually the NXT class of 2013. You had Byron Saxton, the Ascension, Xavier Woods, Rusev, the late Brody Lee, Chris Hero, Adam Rose, Sami Zayn. You learn something every day. The Undertaker's streak was always something to look forward to at WrestleMania. I don't need to say it. It's obvious because when you watch his matches before the streak ended, it was a bit predictable, but at the same time, it was a bit unpredictable. It really added, you know. What I'm trying to say is the matches were always interesting. If he was in there with Edge, he was in there with Shawn Michaels, whoever, there's always a chance, maybe, just maybe, someone was going to end it. Even if it's a small chance. Right when the bell rings, Punk slaps the living hell out of Taker and he was just trying to get him off his game. Punk was literally asking for it at this point, and the crowd was just so damn awesome. Taker recovers and punishes Punk while the ref begins the count. Taker is the leg drop, and he was just taking his time. That is until Punk arm dragged him off the top rope before hitting an old school of his own. Paul Heyman on the outside was sticking it to him with the urn, and it just seemed like at this point, CM Punk was one step ahead of him. He even had an axe handle from the top, and inside the ring, he hits a neck breaker. Near fall once again, and he's back to work with the shoulder. The Undertaker does find some offense, but it doesn't lead to much again, and the former champion gets arrogant this time around, going for the old school again, but he gets dropped onto the ropes. Just as the dead man's going over the top rope, Paul Heyman provided a much-needed distraction, and Punk's back in control. He goes up top again, but this time, he hits the Randy Savage elbow. 1, 2, nope. And it's time for the go to sleep. Nope, it's chokeslam time. Unfortunately for The Undertaker, Punk kicked out. Once again, both men recover. They get into a slugfest that was completely one-sided in favor of the dead man. He tosses him around into the ropes, snake eyes, and just as he goes for the boot, Punk comes in with a drop kick. See, he scouted him. Then they make their way to the outside, specifically the announce table. The Undertaker attempted a last ride but receives the kick, and the former champion thinks hard about what his next move is, and he goes for the elbow, but the table doesn't break. Still a cool moment. The ref makes the count. Taker's crawling but barely beats the count of 10. More work for you, buddy. Just as he's back to work, The Undertaker pulls him in with the Hell's Gate. Luckily, he counters and goes for the Vice, and it seemed like all hope is lost for The Undertaker, and Mike Yoda goes for the pinfall, but Taker sits up and gives us this memorable visual. Look at that moment. Just look at it. Then there was this moment. Punk almost gets the chokeslam and manages to counter and hit the GTS, only to walk into that tombstone pile driver. 1, 2, another kick out. The crowd was just incredible at this point, but hey, you already know that. Back and forth action, rights, chops from both men, and just as it's ending with a chokeslam, the ref gets knocked down and Heyman provides yet another distraction. Running knee? Nope, it's last ride time. Luckily for Punk, he grabs the urn and whacks Taker with it before going for the cover. I believe some thought that was it. Yet another kick out. He couldn't believe it, so he attempted a tombstone, and it leads to this awesome sequence. But in the end, Punk falls victim to the tombstone pile driver. 1, 2, 3. 21-0. Man, was that special. One hell of a match that actually turned out to be Punk's final WrestleMania match and Taker's last great WrestleMania match. Some say it was so good that it should have main evented. And what do you guys think? Me personally, unless they were ending the streak, I don't think they should have main evented it. That's my personal opinion. Right after the match, there was pyro, flames, everything goes off. Taker claims the urn and the fans cheer, and all was good in the world. During the interview at StarCast last year, CM Punk spoke about why he was disappointed with how things went during the WrestleMania story with The Undertaker. And I quote, "I don't remember being mad that I was wrestling The Undertaker at WrestleMania because I think if you look at it, the whole streak thing was like a big thing," he said. "I think I was probably mad about the way it was presented. I was just like, if I'm involved, I want it to be the best it possibly can be. And if you're just another guy wrestling The Undertaker at WrestleMania, it feels like that's exactly what you are. Like, oh, The Undertaker needs to be somebody at WrestleMania. Here you are." I had ideas to actually build it up and make it look like a threat Punk continued, and I never felt I was. I was disappointed in that, but I was never mad I was wrestling The Undertaker. I thought it was a good match. What do you guys think? Me personally, I think it showed that Punk was one of the very top guys to go in there and face The Undertaker. I get it. I mean, it showed that they valued him. But he was mad about the main event thing and all that stuff. So I feel it was a big spot for him, but then again, I don't know how it feels to have held the world title for a year and get replaced by a part-timer. I don't know what that feels like. One thing that would have added to this match greatly, imagine if it was 500-day title reign versus a streak. That would have been ridiculous. Just thinking about, oh man. There's a couple of like scenarios they could have went with that could have made it even cooler. But yeah, they went with this. It It was a classic match. That's one thing for sure. Like I said, the feud in general was heated. It was intense. Punk was hated by a lot of the audience. There was obviously that small percentage that liked him, and you could hear them during some of those promos and whatever. So yeah, the feud itself, it was memorable in my eyes. It may have been controversial, you know, the inclusion of Paul Bearer. They probably shouldn't have included him, but maybe it was something that he would like. I don't know him personally to say. I think if they took the other approach, you know, the one I'm the Phenom or whatever, it wouldn't have been as memorable as this one. So yeah, like I said, memorable feud. Tremendous match. I thought it was cool. I thought the match was the best match of WrestleMania 29. It beat every single match, be it the main event or Brock and Triple H, whatever. It overshadowed all of those matches. So yeah, what do you guys think of this feud? Please comment down below. And that's the first video. Make sure you hit a GTS on the like button and perhaps a tombstone pile driver on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.